Welcome to the Your Voice Matters podcast. I hope you're having a wonderful day, but if not, stick around and let these positive vibes put you in an awesome place. Big shout out to all my listeners and to our fabulous sound engineer, Chance. He makes us all this stuff. We couldn't do it without him. We have a special guest for y'all today. Wynette,
Yes,
got it right?
Yes.
This lady, I don't know where she gets her time, but she does everything. You know, she's a wonderful speaker. You know, she writes books. She's done, oh my gosh, these are all her books, you know. And the thing that I love about her is her attitude. She has such a positive attitude about things that and you can relate to people.
Yes.
And to me, that takes years to learn sometimes, but she's got it mastered. You know. But have you ever been to a conference or something and the speaker gets up there and you can actually feel like they are talking to you? There's nobody else in the room. They are talking to you. And that's how she is. Because she's had so many life experiences, she can relate. And I think that's so awesome. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm very elated anytime I get an invitation. So I'm glad that you saw enough of me to bring me on.
Oh, yeah, we really appreciate it. One of the things that I think that drew me to you were your speeches and your talks and stuff on emotion and everything else. Can you speak to that?
Yes, that's kind of my main niche about who I am as a speaker. I deal with a lot of different subjects, but they all are emotional based. So we talk about healing and how to become your best self, how to overcome depression, self-esteem issues, grief, toxic relationships, illness, you know, the things that we go through as individuals that we kind of deal with behind closed doors. And then when we're in front of people, we mask. And so I talk about how to remove that mask and truly be your best self.
Well, I love that. Let's talk a little bit about that. Because all the people are probably thinking, oh, my goodness, you know, tell me more. I know a lot of times we have self-esteem issues,
right?
Women especially, because just society alone. So can you address that? I mean, can you give us pointers or tell us what we need to do in order to build our self-esteem?
Yeah, most definitely. So for me, I discovered that I had depression and self-esteem issues at a later age, I would say. I started experiencing it like my preteens. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. Like, I came from a loving family. My parents are high school sweethearts, still together to this day. They were absolutely amazing. I had a brother and a sister. I was a middle child. I excelled in school. You know, we were exposed to great adventures and opportunities. And so I still couldn't figure out why I was just unhappy, you know, why I did not feel like I fit in or I belonged. And so it wasn't until I became an adult in my early 20s that I realized that I was just battling with self-esteem and depression issues. I didn't like the way I looked, how I sound, my weight, my hair. It was an inner self complex. And so I did the work to go in, because when I didn't do the work, let me please acknowledge this. When you don't do the work, it becomes a spiral effect. It begins to affect everything in your life. You make decisions based off of that emotion. You make life choices. You interact with people who feed to that emotion. And so unfortunately for me, that was all negative. So everything in my life became a negative concept. I attracted to people who didn't mean well for me. I made decisions that hurt other people who were trying to help me, all because I didn't deal with the inner conflict that I had within myself. And so it caused me to have a negative connotation about life. And so once life hit rock bottom for me and I just spiraled out of control and everybody had been pushed away and it was just me, I decided, okay, something's got to be done. I'm either going to stay in this space or I'm going to choose to do something different. And so that's what I did. I chose to go to counseling. And once I went to a counselor and I sat down with a professional and I started going through all of my problems, and we've all been here where we go through the woe is me and everybody's mean to me. No one likes me. But my counselor was amazing. He was a guy. He was spiritual based because I'm very religious. And he was just honest with me. And he said, Angela, now that I've let you get all that out, now let's really address the real issue, the common denominator in all of those issues, which was myself. I was the common denominator in the people that I chose, the places that I chose to go, the activities that I chose to participate in. And so it was me. And if I wanted a different outcome, it had to start with me and how I viewed myself. And so that's how I did the work, is I went and I just started being honest with myself. I started, saying I don't want to be viewed as mean. I don't want to be viewed as sassy and, going off at the mouth, and people feel like they can't talk to me and I'm not nice and, I'm hard to deal with. And so I had to do the inner work of first learning how to love me, because I couldn't treat other people how to treat me until I learned how to treat myself.
That's good.
Yeah.
I was just trying to think, how many times we tell ourselves things without even realizing it. And I've done this several times in the last few weeks, but it's like, well, Rebecca, you should know that.
Right.
Why should I know that? I've never been here.
Right.
I've never, and we expect so much out of ourselves.
Right.
Well, I know I do. And I think that goes back to the way we were taught.
Right.
Because my mother always said, you can't do anything right, don't do it at all.
Right.
And I think, well, I guess I can't do it right, so I'm not going to do it at all. You know?
But we put unrealistic expectations on ourselves. And then we put all this, especially as women, we put this pressure on ourselves that we have to be everything to everyone. We have to be an amazing wife, an amazing mother, as well as hold down a job and keep our friendships together. And if we're honest with ourselves, that is just unrealistic, because life changes on a daily basis. And 1 week you could be killing it and you're amazing at it. Yeah. And then the next week you're just barely holding on, trying to get through day by day. Yeah. And we punish ourselves for that, not realizing that's just real life. You're not going to always have it together. You're not going to have all the answers. And it's okay to give yourself grace and to say, okay, I had to adjust this week. Next week we'll try to get back on track.
Yeah. And, I always try to do too much at one time.
Yes.
And I guess I think I'm a superwoman. I don't know. And it's too, multitasking is not always a great thing.
Right.
And I think we are always taught to do that because you get more done. Well, not for me, because I'll have to go back and redo it, because I'll read something I wrote and I go, well, that really should sound a little bit better than that. But I wrote it doing something else, and for me, I get distracted.
Right.
I get up. Oh, I have to go do that. Well, finish what you're doing here.
Right. Right.
And I think society has taught most of us that.
Yes, especially in a form of social media.
Yes.
In this day and age in society, social media always makes you feel like you're having to compete with the next person, because we always present very well online, online of, oh, she has it all together. Life is amazing. Oh, they're killing it. They have the best relationship. They're, excelling at everything. But behind closed doors, these people are, as they say, they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. They're borrowing money. Life is just in shambles. But online, it looks great. And so we have this false perception where we feel like we have to keep up this certain identity when that's not our reality. And then we wonder why we're stressed, why we're overwhelmed, why we're just bogged down, why we can't seem to get our life together, our thoughts together, because we're not being realistic with ourselves. And then we're also trying to keep up with people who, if we're honest, they can't even keep up with themselves as well.
Yeah. And I think society does that for us, because if you can't, it's almost like there's subconsciously oh, you should do this.
Right.
Well, who said I should do this?
Right.
We just accept that.
Right.
And the thing is, maybe you don't like to do that.
Right.
And I am not, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a morning person. Now I can stay up all night and do stuff, I'm just not, and for me to say, oh, Rebecca, you really should get up and do this, this, and this. What I finally decided to do, I used to have a list of things I needed to do, and there's probably like 12 things on that list. I mean, it's just not even reasonable to do that in that length of time.
Right.
So I only put 3 things on my list.
Right.
Maybe something easy, something medium, and something hard.
Right.
That way I can finally feel accomplished.
Yes.
Because I don't have that. And so what I do on my phone, I just drag it forward to the next day. If I didn't get it done, it's fine.
Right.
And I think that's, for me, I think that's really, really, for a lot of other women, we do that. And I just don't understand how we got here. You
And
know?
again, I think it's a societal norm that's been placed on us since the beginning of time. Is that women, you're supposed to take care of the household, you're supposed to keep the kids fed and keep the house together, keep your husband happy, and then somewhere along the line, we shifted to where women came into the workforce. And so you were still expected to have that expectation of fulfilling that role of keeping everything together, but now add work into that.
Yes.
And so there was never an evolution that came along with the movement as things changed. And so there's still some with that same stigma and mindset of this is how things are supposed to be. And it's like, no, we've evolved. Time has evolved. Things have changed. So we have to change and know that you're not going to always be able to do everything. You're not going to always be accomplishing everything. And I tell my clients and my friends who always say, I feel like I'm stuck. I don't know how to move forward. I feel like I should be doing more. I should be doing better. And I always tell them, start with the basics. First, establish a plan. What does that look like for you?
Okay.
What does your future look like? What do you want to accomplish? Okay. And then give yourself a time frame, because I've learned for me, if I give myself a time frame and I say, this is what I want to accomplish, and I have 30 days to do it, or 60 days or 90 days or a year, whatever that task is, I give myself a realistic expectation, and then I set myself to that. Okay. And so at this point, that's my focal point. And so I start at the basics and say, let me establish a plan. And then let me write down from, like you said, the smallest to the biggest, because I don't want to start off with something too big and then I overwhelm myself and then now I feel like a failure. I feel like I haven't accomplished, and then that is what psychs us out. And that's what keeps us from trying, because we start off with way too much instead of building ourselves up to that to be able to achieve it. And so then we already psych ourselves out that we're not good at it. We can't accomplish it, when that's not the case.
Well, too, sometimes I have to do it one day at a time.
That is true.
Because I think if I look too forward, that way, I'm going to get freaked out.
Right.
Because I'm thinking, and I don't know, it feels like a big weight on your shoulders.
Right.
And I thought, and then you feel like you have to hurry.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So you mess it up anyway, so you have to go back and redo it, because you're hurrying. And we just, so, I mean, it's one of those things that's a tricky thing to get out of.
Yeah.
So, and does any of your books address that?
Yes, actually, all of them do, actually. So my first book that I wrote is called My Pain Versus My Purpose. And so this particular book, it's basically a book about me divorcing me. So it was me, again, taking that mindset of divorcing the toxic mindset I had about myself, the toxic view that I had about myself, thinking that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't have what it took, that I wasn't lovable, that, I wasn't supposed to be valued and cherished. And so that was me just, taking those mindsets out and replacing them with the positive, with the good, and also removing those people who fit me in that space that I was in, but now having to change to where I wanted to go. Okay. And who I want it to be. And sometimes that's the hardest part for us, is we have this sense of loyalty or longevity to people. And so we keep them around past the season that they're supposed to be in. And then we wonder why we feel stagnant, or we feel like I took one step forward, but I'm 3 steps back. And sometimes it's because we have not changed everything and every component that is causing us to still be in that space. We can change our mindset, but if we're still feeding it with the people around us, the places that we go, the things that we do, your mindset can do all that it wants, but your actions are not helping feed that mindset that you're looking to accomplish.
No, the people that are not good for you can be family members.
Correct.
So,
correct.
So you address that. Excuse me, you can't come to dinner.
Yeah. No, and even then, with family and close friends, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to sever ties. Sometimes you just have to learn boundaries.
Yeah. Okay.
You have to be able to establish balance and say, "Hey, I love you, but I'm not going to continue to keep coming over. And I know that gossiping is not helping me and I'm trying to be positive." Okay. Or I know drinking is not helping me and I'm trying to kick that habit. Yeah. Or going out to eat is not helping me when I'm trying to stick to my budget. And so sometimes we have to just be real with the people that we're around and let them know, hey, this is where I'm trying to become. This is where I'm trying to be. Right. This is the goal that I'm trying to accomplish. If they support that, great. Take them along for the ride. If they don't and they give you hindrance or backlash or, make you feel crazy for wanting better, then sometimes you have to say, okay, I love you, but I love you from over here, from a distance. Okay. And learn to just set that boundary. It doesn't mean that I don't want to talk to you. It doesn't mean that I don't want to hang out with you. I just have to limit that until I get to a space where I'm able to actually coincide with you and it doesn't affect me in a negative way, and I can move forward and move past that, and it doesn't impact who I am or my emotions for the day.
And see, sometimes you have to say, I know you love me.
Right.
And I know you want to give me advice.
Right.
But right now, I cannot handle that.
Right.
you know?
Right.
And they mean well.
Right.
But it doesn't help you.
No, and I've had to learn that. Even being a life coach, I have to learn, because my friends and family will tell me, don't life coach me today. And I have to learn, you got to cut it off, Angela, because again, you're right. You have to meet people where they are. And so I've gotten to that space now after having to go through some situations and realize, okay, Angela, you overstepped your bounds, of now having to reevaluate. And now I approach situations and I ask, are you just venting or are you looking for advice? That way it can navigate and set the tone for that type of conversation so that I can know how this interaction is going to go. Are you looking for me to help you and give you a resolution, or are you just wanting to get this off your chest so that you can get it out, but you're not really looking for, any solution at this point?
And sometimes people will say stuff and they want you to feel sorry for them.
Right.
And stuff like that. And I didn't realize that at first, and we all have to learn. And then when I realized what they were doing, I thought, that doesn't serve you either.
Right.
Right.
And
well, tell me what positive you can say, what come out of this outcome, something that's positive.
Right.
And they go, oh, they actually had to stop and think.
Right.
And I think that's a good thing for both of us.
Yes.
And that was bad it happened, but look what happened here.
Right. Right. And my friends know that too. They always know, don't come to me if you're not looking for, a positive outcome or a motivational or encouragement light, because as much as I'm going to let you get that out, at the end of the day, my motive and my, outcome for you is always going to be, so how can we move forward?
Yes.
How can we better this situation? How can we overcome this? Because as much as I want you to get it out, acknowledge your feelings, because that's the only way you're really going to heal, is to acknowledge your feelings, what you're going through. Let's put a name to it. Let's put an emotion to it so that we can move forward. But at the end of the day, my objective is always going to be moving forward.
Yes.
So if you want to stay stuck, if you want to, be that woe is me person, be the person who always, point to blame and point fingers to everyone else, I may not be the friend for you.
Yes.
And I'm honest about that though.
Yeah. But it's really hard when you get down into that point.
Right.
To pull yourself back out.
Right. Right.
And that's one where you made a comment that you need to go talk to somebody.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. But when I was growing up, I remember this girl was in my class, and somebody says, "Oh, they go to a psychiatrist," and I'm thinking, so? And then
Right.
I didn't even know what a psychiatrist was probably back then, because I was like, I don't know, first grade or something.
Right.
And so anyway, I thought, well, they were just made. I guess they didn't do that back then.
It was always, what goes on in this house stays in this house. We
Right.
don't discuss things. We don't bring our business to the public. We don't put that in the public light. And I think that's been another hindrance to our culture, is feeling like it's a bad thing to address things. When, if we're honest, talking them out, getting that, advice from somebody, and especially getting a non-biased advice, someone you
right.
don't know.
Yeah.
So that way you don't feel as though it's personal. You don't feel as though this person is
Right.
attacking you, because this person doesn't even know you. They're just going off of what they're telling you and the vibe that you're giving them. So if they're giving you something, it's literally because they've been trained to do this. They're certified to do this. They're licensed to do this. They've studied this, so they're giving you the best interest for you, and that'll help you be able to move forward. And I've discovered that as a life coach, I've learned I cannot help my friends and family. As much as I love them and as much as I would help any way I possibly can, I tell them now, I'll pray for you, and, and go get some help. I can give you names. I can refer you to people, because it's hard sometimes when you're so close to someone,
Yes.
for them
yes.
to detach the emotion
Yeah.
with the educational advice that you're giving them, because it's always going to be personal for them.
Yeah.
Because they'll listen to you in that moment, but then as time goes by, then now you become the villain, because
Right.
you told me, or you said,
Yeah.
so
it didn't work out.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I've learned, to just, again, establish those boundaries and learn to just, okay, we're not going to overstep, overshare, and just that way, again, to preserve our friendship and relationship, as well as doing the best interest in getting them the help that they need.
Yeah. Well, I studied psychology in college.
Okay.
So that was real helpful.
Yeah.
And I remember when my daughter was young, she said, well, I'm just, when they can't feel, they have to sort out their emotions.
Right.
And I told her, I said, my emotions are not right or wrong. I mean, they just are. You're mad, you're happy, you're irritated, it doesn't matter. It's how you act on them.
Right.
And she was cool. This little boy that lived next door, he's just irritating, and I said, that's all right, he'll grow out of it.
Right.
You hope. But but that also you give them labels.
Right.
Instead of them all being mixed up in your head. And
Right.
even adults are like that.
Right.
If once you label it, this is what I've learned. Once you label it, it has a name.
Right.
So it's not scary like you were saying.
Right.
So it's manageable.
Right.
What I do now to get out of that.
Right.
So I get that. So
yeah, and it helps you compartmentalize. It helps you, be able to navigate that space and what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So when that emotion does arise again, you now know how to react.
Yeah.
You now know how to, maneuver in that space. And that was something after I wrote this first book that everyone asked, well, how did you do that? How did you move from, being able to discover what you had and then to actually start the healing process?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where my second book came out called Hurt, Healed, Happy. And this one is a roadmap. And it's just step-by-step ways of how to truly heal. Whether that's healing from yourself, healing from others who did stuff to you that was inappropriate or whatever, and then also learning how to heal if you never get that apology. If you never get that forgiveness that you're looking for, or if you never get that reconciled, relationship that you were hoping for, how to find peace with that, because that's a big thing too that would keep us stagnant, is always wanting or wishing or hoping for something that may never become our reality.
Yeah.
And having to be okay with that and moving forward.
I can understand that because and sometimes people die before you can actually get to that point.
Right.
And so you carry this guilt along with you. And, and the thing is, they were doing the best they could.
Right.
And I was doing the best I could.
Right.
So leave it like that.
Right.
Maybe that was supposed to happen.
Right.
That's kind of like my thing. When things happen in life, maybe they're supposed to at that particular time.
And that's another thing as well, is learning that our reality or our sense of reality is not going to always be the outcome. We may want something in our head. We may have a certain vision. We may have a certain timeline. We feel like, especially women, oh, my body clock, I'm 35. I need to hurry up and get married, have kids, and we rush ourselves into stuff because we have these certain, standards and stigmas that we have placed on ourselves. And because of that, it causes us to move in certain ways that are not always beneficial, and because we don't think things through. And so that's the same with people, is we feel like we have all this time in the world. We feel like we have all the ways to, I'll just be mad today, but I'll think about it tomorrow. I'll, deal with this and I'll worry about it tomorrow. But I've counseled several people who that's what they say. And they were like, I lost my sibling and I wish I would have fixed it, because now I have this guilt because I was being petty, or I was being childish, or I was, being mean and holding on to this grudge. And now they're gone, and it happened unexpectedly. And so they're sitting with that guilt. But sometimes we have to experience that loss to teach us that life is fleeting, or that those moments that we are wasting being mad or, precious, that you're not going to always get them. You're not going to always have that opportunity. So it's either fix it or sit with that guilt and then now figure out how to have to heal from that guilt.
I was always told, growing up, and I don't know, maybe they were a little wise back then. Don't ever go to bed mad.
Right.
Or angry at someone, even if they can't forgive you, you forgive them.
Right.
Because you have to walk on your side of the street, sweep your side of the street.
Yes.
Basically.
Right.
And sometimes it works out that way. People are just not going to forgive you, or they're not going to they just cut off relationships.
Right.
And it's like, well, I don't know what I did wrong,
Right.
And you can go back and worry yourself sick.
Right.
But if you did everything you thought was right, let it go.
Right.
And I think that's the hard part about letting it go.
Yes.
Because we're always going to think we're right and we did everything right. And that's not necessarily true.
Right. See, and I'm a big empath. So I take on everybody. I take on everything. And with that, sometimes that's what gets me in trouble as well, because I, overanalyze.
Oh.
And, I'll overthink, and I'll be like, well, what did I do? And I'll go out my way to try to, make things right or try to fix things, and some situations are not meant to be salvageable.
Yes.
And then some of them are meant to be fixed, and so you just have to figure out how to maneuver in that space. And so that's one thing that I've battled with myself personally, is just learning how to give that grace when it's needed, but then also how to respect the fact that this again happened for a reason that is beneficial or may have been good for the both of us in the space that we're in, and learn that boundary and be okay with that space. That may not be the, you know, finality of how things are going to be between you, but sometimes you might need that space to reevaluate, you know, to recenter yourself, to get yourself back on track, to really view that person and see if that's really fitting for you where you are. And the same for them.
Yeah. Well, I know you probably run across people that don't like quiet.
Yeah.
You know, they're so used to having noise around and stuff like that. But when you have to sit with your thoughts,
Right.
and sit with the reality that you have, you know, defects of character,
Right. Right.
that gets really hard, because if you be really honest, I used to do this. I used to take a piece of paper and fold it in half, and I write down, you know, all my defects of character, whether I'm always late, or, you know, just, you know, I procrastinate, or, you know, you just put it down.
Right.
And then on the opposite side, you put down all the things that could fix it, or what you
Right.
would want to be. And once you write it down, I don't know if this is you being a writer, once you write it down, it makes it real.
Right.
You know, it's like, okay. And you're looking at it like, it didn't sound like that in my head. It sounded like, you know, we're always right.
Right.
But not necessarily. You know, once you get it down and go, oh, that's manageable.
Right.
You know, and to me, that was something that I could fix.
Right.
You know, and you wouldn't fix them all at one time, guys.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing as well, dealing with different clients and family and friends that I've noticed, even within myself, is that first you have to acknowledge the issue, acknowledge the problem, and then go from there and do the accountability work. It's easy to say, well, yeah, I know I'm mean, but if you're not willing to do anything about it, you know, or, well, yeah, I like alcohol, that's my coping mechanism, or, yeah, I like to scream because that's just how I talk, or, you know, yeah, I'm just, you know, overly passionate, you know, that's fine, but at the same time, once you acknowledge that, then it's time to do the accountability work of changing that, or figuring out how to adapt to where what may be okay with you is not necessarily okay in general with everybody else, just because you're okay with it. Okay. If other people are not comfortable with that, if you respect this person, if you love this person, if you care about these people, there has to be some inner work to adjust.
Okay.
To say, you know what, I love you, and just because this is how I was raised, because that's another thing, or I'm a Gemini, you know, or that's just how I was raised, you know, that's such a big cop out for us.
Yes.
And we think that that's okay, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's fine.
Yes.
And so with that being the case, it's just a matter of, you know, you have to figure out now, just because I was used to that does not mean someone else is used to being screamed at. Yeah. Or being talked to loudly, or being disrespected, or they're not used to, you know, me being a smoker or a drinker, you know, that may be triggering for them. And so finding ways of how to respect that space with the people that you love, and then how can we fix that? You know, how can we go forward and me respecting you and what you're comfortable with, and also me respecting you for who you are. Right. And sometimes that means, well, I have to respect you again from over there. Or, you know, I can respect you, and let's find a way that benefits both of us.
Right. Well, you've already introduced your two children's books. Let's go through some of your other ones.
Yeah, so this project here is called Through Your Eyes. This was a project I did with my friends. Again, because I work with tons of people, and so I always get all these different examples that people give about, you know, well, I was brought up this way, I was brought up that way, you know. And so this book is a book I did interview questions with different people from all walks of life, different races, and it gives examples of how they were raised and their view versus a kid versus now, and how that was able to sit down. And some of them, even when I was asking the questions, had to be like, you know what, I never thought about that, you know, because we don't always sit down and really reflect and do the work to think about things in an in-depth manner. You know, we do a lot of surface thinking. And so when we actually have to sit down and somebody asks us a question that they're like, oh, you know what, that's a good question, you know, and I have to sit with that, you know, because it makes you look at things from a different perspective. And so this book, again, was a project that I did with my friends, talking to them and seeing how life adapted them and equipped them for who they are now as an adult. And if they didn't like that, then what did they do to change it?
Yes.
Or if they just stayed in that space because this is who I am, this is what I'm comfortable with. I don't like to be challenged at my comfort zone. And so that's just, what they adapted to. So that was something that we went through together.
So do you tell people that they have so many, like I've always heard, there are so many weeks you have to change, like a character defect.
Right.
And is that still true?
It really depends on the person because that's one of the newest journals that I came out with. I have 2 journals out. And so this newest journal is called Sit Down and Heal. And they always say if you do something for 30 days, it becomes a habit.
Okay.
And so this particular journal is just that, sitting down and healing, learning how to establish daily positive routines from the morning to the night. And even if you don't know what that looks like, it gives you examples in the journal of how to establish a healthy routine throughout the day, because your morning sets the tone for your day. So if you wake up and because you're late, now you have an attitude, you get to work, you're taking it out on people, and it just kind of spirals throughout your day, and now innocent people are taking strays because you're upset and they're like, well, I didn't even do nothing, and so, but it's because of how your day started.
That's what I need. I need that one.
Yeah.
Because, I'm the type of person, if I don't have my coffee in the morning, that's it,
But learning how to adjust, if you don't get your coffee, okay, what other mechanism can I do to get me my inner caffeine fix, to keep me going until I'm able to get my fix, like there's just, again, establishing positive routines and habits. And so that's something that I would tell people. It's possible. But I also tell people to be realistic. Rome wasn't created in a day, as they say. So if you're 35, if you're 22, if you're 60, some of these habits you have developed your whole life. Yeah. And so it's not going to take just 30 days to demolish that mindset. It's going to have to be a continual
workout. Yeah.
On a daily basis. But it starts with, again, starting those healthy habits and routines, so that when you do have those setbacks, when you do have those moments of, confusion or whatever the case is, you now have a plan in place. Okay, this is what I know I need to do to help get me back on track.
Right.
Or even having an accountability partner. This is who I know I can call. Or, maybe I need to do 2 sessions this week of therapy instead of 1 to help get me back in a good space.
Yes.
Just knowing that you have those resources and tools, establishing them, and then utilizing them.
Yes. And, too, I think a lot of times we grow up and have these things that protect us.
Right.
And so as we get older, like you said, we just make them really classy and we just polish them up a little bit and like they just flow, you know, and then they become a habit or they become part of you.
Right.
And that's even more dangerous because they're harder to get rid of.
Right.
Than just a habit. They just stick around because you're comfortable with them.
Right.
You feel secure with them. Yeah. And to me, I had to realize that one time. I'm a writer, so what I do when I get to a space where I'm really uncomfortable, I sit down and I get a sheet of paper and I just write. I don't care. Whatever comes in my mind, I write.
Right.
And I write and write and write until I can't write anymore.
Right.
And then I go back and read it one time, just one time.
Right.
And then you're reading it and you're thinking, well, that's not what I thought, and you're thinking, oh, is that why I did that? I mean, it's like something like a mirror.
Yeah.
And read it once, tear it up. I don't care. You catch it on fire, you put it down the toilet. It's gone. And actually doing that physical part of it, it gets it out of your head and it's gone. I don't have to deal with that anymore.
Right.
So to me, that is something. Some lady told me that years ago, and I thought, oh, that sounds good. And so the first time I tried it, it's like, wow.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the coping mechanism. That coping mechanism works for you.
Yeah.
And that's and it does for me too. Writing is my therapy because, like you said earlier, we have those defense mechanisms. For me, whenever I feel like, oh, I'm being backed in the corner, I'm being done wrong, and I didn't do anything, my natural defense is just to shut down and protect myself.
Yes.
I'm going to go in this corner over here. I'm going to leave you over there. I'm going to hope time and space fixes things. But now that I'm in this new space, I'm learning that I can't always, hide and run from things, and so you have to address things. But I'm also learning that you have to make sure the space and opportunity is presented for that.
Right.
Because just because you're ready to address something or deal with something does not mean the other person of offense is.
Oh, I thought I ran into that.
Yeah.
I I didn't realize that. I thought, I had done something that I thought maybe offended somebody. So I felt like I owed them an apology.
Right.
And they were like, well, you owe me more than that. And I thought, I didn't do that. Like, it was just something, but I guess I got their feelings hurt more than I thought. And I didn't think it was anything huge.
Right.
I just thought I probably needed to apologize for that. Or I'm Polish. I say things kind of backwards sometimes.
Right.
And so anyway, so even apologizing for that. And some people don't. And that's the thing you have to realize. Sometimes they don't accept your apology.
Exactly. And you have to learn to be okay with that.
Yeah.
You have to learn to adjust accordingly because everybody's not going to be receptive. They're not going to be welcoming. They're not going to be open. They're not going to be forgiving. And so in that space, that's one of those, all you can do is do what you're capable and able of doing. And then if they're receptive, great. If they're not, again, I love you. I'm sorry that this is the outcome, and just go on otherwise, and then hope over time it fixes itself and we can come back and have a conversation, or it was great while it lasted. There's no hard feelings. I don't hate you. Hopefully you don't hate me, and we can move forward and be cohesive in an environment together respectfully, and so I think that's where we get caught up sometimes is because we feel like just because we want something resolved in that moment, that the other person is supposed to be receptive. And like you said, if I offended you deeper than I thought I did, or if I hurt you more than I gave credit to, I have to respect that because your feelings are your feelings, just like mine are, my feelings. And so just like I want you to respect how I feel and why I felt that way, I also have to give you the space and time to understand you may need a little bit more time. Or my apology that was surfaced for, you meant something more to me. It was deeper to me, but that was not how they perceived it. And so you have to understand that, and let's be able to talk through that. Yeah. And if we can't, then again, respect that, give them their space, and hopefully we can revisit this and circle back another time.
And sometimes people just have to take time.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm really excited, guys. She has got this inspirational 365 day thing. It's like handing you like the world. It's like, okay, this is what's going to save your sanity.
And so this is the I Am Enough journal, again, because it's always important to have those positive affirmations about yourself, how you view yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you respond to yourself. And so this one, for those of you who need more than 30 days, this is the 365-day journal. And every day it starts off by establishing a goal. Because that's another issue that we have is we pour into everybody else. We make time for everything and everyone else, and then we don't make time for ourselves. And then once we get to this space where now we're overwhelmed, we feel underappreciated. We feel like people don't see me. They don't value me. But we also have to understand sometimes we created that environment because of how we treated ourselves, how we carried ourselves. And if you always put yourself on the back burner, then that's how other people are also going to acknowledge you and see you. Because they'll look at you and then, just like for a husband and wife example, for the wife, it may be important to her that, I have a meal on the table every day. The laundry is done. The kids are in bed by 8 o'clock, so that we can have time to do whatever, or you can have time to relax when you get home from work. And the husband is saying, I don't need all that. I don't care about all that. And then you get offended because you thought that's how things were supposed to be. That's how they were supposed to look, when he's saying, I'm okay with a fast food meal, just, as long as we have 30 or 45 minutes together, just to spend family time together. Or, I just need 30 minutes to unwind to myself, whatever that looks. So I think it's very important to establish healthy communication of what does love look like for you? What does a healthy relationship look like for you? A healthy friendship? Because all day long, I can think I'm helping you, but if that's not what you need in that season, and if that's not being, valuable to what you're going through in that moment, then it's really wasted time.
Yeah, I heard this lady one time said, did I hear you say da 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 da? And I'm going, I didn't say that. And that's really helpful, husband or whatever relationship you're in, because you can say, I didn't really say that, and then you wonder, were you not listening? But, it's just people. We just hear things differently.
Right. How we perceive it. Yeah. Yeah. And that's why this journal makes you set a goal every day. And it could be something small. And that's another thing. Be realistic with your goals. Don't start off with, oh, I'm going to save up $10,000 this month. Let's, first we got to get out of debt. Let's start something small, like let's just start saving $20 every week, But this is a goal. You set a goal every day, whether that goal is, today I'm actually going to put gas in the car tonight instead of waiting in the morning and now I'm late to work.
Yes.
And now that affects my mood because now I don't have gas to get to work and I have to stop and now I'm late, And so setting those goals, and then at the end of the day, it asks you, did you accomplish the goal? Yes or no, and why? Were you the problem? Or was it the people that you hung around? Or was it the fact that you set an unrealistic goal that when you knew you had your schedule for the day, you were not going to have time to achieve that? And now you're mad and you feel undefeated because I didn't get that done. But if you looked at your schedule and you knew you had soccer practice when you got home, or you knew you had to go to the PTA meeting, and so you weren't going to get home to 7 instead of 5, like those things, sometimes we set ourselves up for failure and then we're mad when the outcome happens because we didn't give ourselves a fair chance to really be successful.
Then you get down on yourself, and that is another thing. I mean, you have to. It's almost like you have to keep that in the back of your mind all the time, because we always expect great expectations of ourselves.
Right.
And, you just can't, that's not, I've learned like you, I like put one thing at the top of my paper, but if it's just, if it's a like multitasking thing, I mean, not multi, but something that's got to take some time.
Right.
And I don't want to finish it today. It's just like it's one of those 2-day things. But some days, even with your tasks like that you talked about, some days you just don't feel like doing anything. And to me, that's okay.
It is.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I think sometimes we were raised, I don't know whether we were raised, or society says, well, you're just lazy.
Right.
And that's not true. I mean, I've traveled so much. If you go overseas and you immerse yourself into those cultures, they don't work 40 or 50 hours a week.
No, their lifestyle is so much
so much different. Yeah. Family comes first. If they have something that's come up that they have to take care of, no problem. What do you want me to do? We'll figure it out and we'll do your job. And they have time for friends.
Right.
They have time to go out to eat. I mean, not just eat, but leisurely eat.
Right. Spend time together. Yeah.
Time together and friendships together. And they just have a different way of, for me, that's the best way to live because you're living. And if you're rushing around doing this for this person, this for that, we're not living.
Right.
We're just like, we're living by our itinerary.
Right. Well, and some of us, it's easier for us to stay busy because if I have something else to focus on, I don't have to deal with my own problems.
Oh, there
and
you go.
That's where we find ourselves in trouble as well. We take on everybody else's issues, everybody else's projects, everybody else's, concerns that they need done. And then when we've neglected home or ourselves long enough, and now we're in self-destruct mode and we're, burned out, now we're mad and we're like, well, you don't ever help me. And it was like, well, you're never home for me to see that you need it. Or you never stopped long enough for me to be like, how can I assist you? Because you're always just going. Or somebody else is always your focal point to where if you never show that you're a person of interest or a person of need, then how do I know that you need that?
Right.
And that's why I have these children's book out. And we start early with dispelling that. So the first book is called I'm Possible.
So what ages are we
So
looking
it's
at?
all ages. It's from, birth to preteens.
Okay.
And this one is teaching them, the first one is teaching them about they can be whatever they want to be. Society doesn't have to decide that for them. We always think we have to be that, singer or that, NFL person or whatever. But if you want to be that astronaut, if you want to be that psychiatrist, if you want to be that congresswoman, you can do that.
Yes.
And society doesn't have to decide that. So it teaches them a little rhyme about they can be whatever they want to be. There's no endless possibilities of that. You can do it. This second book is called The Magic Witch Ball. This is my newest book that came out. This one here. It's teaching them about learning how to care for others because we have a lot of self-entitled people in the world.
Yes.
And so this one is teaching them to care about others and not just themselves, wanting to help others. And, let's start being careful about how we do things because it might affect others and not just ourselves. And then also teaching them about not taking things that don't belong to us. Because as kids, sometimes that entitlement makes us feel like we're owed that or I'm supposed to have it because, well, my cousin got it or my friend got it, so why don't I? But we also have to learn that in today's society, that may not be your parents or whoever's, financial ability to be able to do that. So teach them to be grateful for what they do have and what they're able to receive.
That's good.
Yeah.
I know when my daughter was she was like 5, and our church had this program where we went out into the community,
Mm-hmm.
and people would call in if they needed food or they needed this, they needed that. And so I decided to take my daughter because I thought people don't have probably everything that I have.
Right.
And I didn't want her growing up thinking that, she's not seeing this.
Right.
And not being compassionate because people, it doesn't matter. I mean, they could have had a bad time, got
Right.
into a situation, got divorced,
Right.
whatever. So I would take her. And she was really good. I mean, she didn't say much, but she watched.
Right. Taking it in.
And taking it all in.
Yeah.
And today, when she was in high school, they had a community service day. And she would go out, and she got sent to it was where they had runaway teens,
Okay.
and she made friends with one of these girls in here. So every month, the girl was still there, and she was too old to be adopted.
Okay.
She was like 16.
Right.
And everybody wants a baby. So,
Right.
So the last time she had to go at the end of the year, she got home and she was like, Mom, so-and-so got adopted. An older family
Mhm.
had raised all their kids, and they had adopted her.
Nice.
And I thought that was just the perfect
Nice.
thing,
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
seeing a positive outcome.
Right.
But I think we need to do that with our kids.
Right.
And I think some people don't talk about that enough.
Right.
And not that even if you're not that you have a lot or you have too much or whatever, it just needs to be. People just need to see that.
Right. Right.
And that makes them a better person.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
It does. So, and that's why I try to, help all ages as much as I possibly can. So if you're available in Dallas Fort Worth this weekend, I am doing a book signing at Half Price Books. It's across from North Park Mall on Northwest Highway between 11 and 2. So there is going to be a live author reading for the kids' books. So bring your kids out. We're going to have little trinkets and giveaways. The first reading is going to be at 11:30. And then from 12 to 1, I have a book signing. We're going to have all of these books for sale. And then the second kids' book reading is going to be at 1:30 for you to bring your kids if you can't make the first one. But again, we're going to have giveaways. There's going to be all kinds of nice things going on. Come get your book signed, take pictures, so that I can interact with you. I love giving back to the community and just being hands-on with you guys and getting to see you, get to meet you, and figure out how I can help you.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. And it's right in the middle of the city.
Yes.
So that's great.
Yeah.
We brought so much from the Half Price Books that we probably should own the shares in it. But if somebody needs to talk to you, get connected to you, can you give your information?
Yes. So you can reach me on my website at www.angelawynette, that's ANGELAWYNETTE.com. And on there, you can fill out the inquiry form, and it'll when you fill out that form, it'll give you my information to where you can reach out with me to set up a session if you just want to talk, if you need, a counseling session, if you are interested in writing a book, I help with those as well. To where if you have an event and you want me to come speak, you can fill out that form, and it'll let you list out what it is that you're inquiring about. And it also lists my phone number on there. It also has a website on there for all of this merchandise is available for purchase. So if you are not able to attend the event this Saturday, you can go online. I do ship orders. I do ship from afar. I've shipped abroad before, all the way to Africa. So we will handle any capacity that you need. We have it available. And then we also have an inspirational, motivational t-shirt line as well. And so we have different ones. This one is called I Am Enough. And so this is a part of that 365-day journal. And so it's always nice to walk around with that reminder that you are enough. The second one here is for the kids line. That's called I'm Possible. And so that's another motivational one to remind you that you are possible. It's not impossible. And so that's our second t-shirt line. And then our third one is that we have is called Because I'm Qualified. And this one is just a reminder that you are qualified. You can do whatever you set your mind to. Nothing is going to stop you from doing that but yourself. It starts with you.
I need to get my daughter that.
Yeah.
It's been a joy actually for you to come, and she's done so much in such a short time, and it's just it's amazing. She just brings the energy with her. So if you need to book her, she gave you your information. You can look it up.
Yes. Yes.
But
AngelaWynette.com. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing is that she will probably go anywhere.
Yeah, I travel all over, so just let me know and get with me so I can get it on my schedule, and I'll be more than happy to travel and speak. I do teen summits, women conferences. I do all kinds of things that you're looking for. So I even go to corporations, colleges, universities. So wherever you need me, I will be there. I'll be present.
Okay. Oh, thank you so much. And it has been a wonderful, wonderful hour with you guys. And we will see you next week on the Your Voice Matters show. Bye-bye.